First contact and mistrust. The alarm systems of mining station Alpha 7 screamed through the corridors at exactly 0347 hours. Marcus Chun rolled out of his bunk, pulling on his work boots as his mind processed the emergency codes flashing on his personal display. Structural collapse in Section C, his section. Marcus grabbed his engineering toolkit and ran through the dimly lit passages of the station. Zarian 7 was not a forgiving world. The planet's high gravity and unstable geology made mining operations dangerous even under the best conditions. As the station's senior structural engineer, Marcus had seen his share of cave-ins and equipment failures, but something about tonight felt different. The heavy blast doors to Section C stood partially open, twisted metal jutting from their frames like broken teeth. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the debris-scattered floor. Marcus squeezed through the gap, his flashlight cutting through the settling dust clouds. "Hello?" He called out, his voice echoing in the damaged tunnel. "Anyone hurtin'?" "Here?" The silence that followed was broken by a low, rumbling sound that made the hair on Marcus's neck stand up. It was not mechanical. It was organic, and it was angry. Marcus followed the sound deeper into the collapsed section, stepping carefully over chunks of ceiling material and twisted support beams. The mining equipment here had been completely destroyed. A massive ore processor lay on its side, its hull cracked open like an egg. Sparks flew from severed power lines, illuminating the destruction in brief. Violent flashes. That was when he saw her. Trapped beneath a fallen support beam was a creature unlike anything Marcus had ever seen in person. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with sleek, dark blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting. Her body was lean but powerfully muscled, built for speed and strength. 4 arms extended from her torso, each ending in hands tipped with razor-sharp claws. Her face was angular and fierce, with large, golden eyes that burned with intelligence and fury. Marcus recognized her species immediately. Vorthok, the warrior race that had been fighting a brutal conflict with human colonies for over a decade. They were known throughout the galaxy for their combat prowess and their absolute hatred of humanity. The Vorthok warrior was trapped from the waist down, the heavy metal beam pinning her legs against the floor. Dark blue blood pooled beneath her, and one of her 4 arms hung at an unnatural angle. Despite her injuries, she snarled at Marcus when she noticed his approach, her sharp teeth gleaming in the flashlight beam. "Stay back, human," she hissed, in accented but clear standard Galactic. "I would rather die than accept help from your kind." Marcus stopped several feet away, raising his hands to show he carried no weapons. "Easy there. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm an engineer. I heard the collapse and came to check for survivors." "Survivors?" The Vorthok's golden eyes narrowed. "You mean you came to finish what your people started?" This was no accident, was it? Another human trap. Marcus frowned, genuinely confused. "I don't know what you're talking about." "This is a mining accident. Happens all the time on unstable worlds like this one." He gestured to the destruction around them. The support systems failed, probably due to seismic activity. The warrior studied his face carefully, searching for signs of deception. After a long moment, she spoke again. "My name is Zarakethful. I am a scout for the Vorthok Defense Corps. I was investigating reports of illegal mining operations in this sector when your tunnel collapsed." Marcus nodded slowly. "Marcus Chun, structural engineer, and this isn't illegal mining. Station Alpha 7 has proper permits from the Galactic Mining Authority." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "Look, we can argue politics later. Right now, you're hurt and trapped. Let me help you." Zara's response was immediate and vehement. "Never. I have seen what humans do to captured Vorthok." "I have?" "Seen the bodies of my people after your medical treatment. Death would be preferable." The hatred in her voice was like a physical force, but Marcus heard something else beneath it. Pain. Not just physical pain from her injuries, but something deeper. The kind of pain that came from loss and betrayal. Marcus set down his toolkit and sat cross-legged on the debris-covered floor, making himself appear less threatening. I'm not going anywhere. This beam is too heavy for you to lift alone, and those injuries need attention. Then we both die here, Zara replied flatly. For the next hour, Marcus worked in silence. He studied the collapsed beam, calculating angles and stress points. The Vorthic warrior watched his every movement with suspicious eyes, occasionally letting out soft growls when the pain from her injuries flared up. Marcus retrieved his portable hydraulic jack from his toolkit and began setting up a lifting system. The work was slow and careful. One wrong move could bring down more of the unstable ceiling. What are you doing? Zara asked, despite her earlier declaration that she wanted no help. Creating a fulcrum system, Marcus explained without looking up from his work. If I can get enough leverage under this beam, I can lift it enough for you to pull free. Why? The simple question hung in the air between them. Marcus paused in his work and looked directly into Zara's golden eyes. Because you're hurt and I can help. That is not an answer. Your species and mine are at war. I am your enemy. Marcus resumed his work, adjusting the position of his jack. Are you planning to attack me? If I could move, yes. But you can't move. So right now, you're not my enemy. You're just someone who needs help. Zara fell silent, studying this strange human who seemed to operate by rules she did not understand. In her experience, humans were creatures of calculation and cruelty. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. Yet this one worked steadily to free her, asking nothing in return. The hydraulic jack hissed to life, and slowly, inch by painful inch, the massive beam began to rise. Marcus monitored the lift carefully, watching for signs that the makeshift fulcrum might fail. Now, he said when the beam had lifted enough. Can you pull yourself free? Zara gritted her teeth and used her 3 good arms to drag herself backward. Her legs emerged from beneath the beam, both clearly broken but not crushed beyond repair. She collapsed onto her side, breathing heavily from the effort and pain. Marcus quickly released the jack, and the beam crashed back down with a thunderous impact that shook the entire tunnel. Dust rained from the damaged ceiling. Without a word, Marcus opened his medical kit and began laying out supplies. Zara watched him warily. I told you I will not accept human medical treatment. Marcus nodded and set the medical supplies on the ground between them. I'm not going to force anything on you. But those legs need to be stabilized and you're losing blood. He stood up and moved several feet away. The supplies are there if you want them. The bone regenerator is already calibrated. FOR Vorthak physiology. Zara stared at him in shock. How do you know Vorthak physiology? Marcus shrugged. I read a lot. And after 3 years on frontier stations, you learn to treat injuries for various species. He turned to leave. I'll be back in a few hours too. Check on you. Wait. Zara's voice stopped him at the edge of the debris field. You're just going to leave me here with medical supplies and trust that I will not use them as weapons? The bone regenerator weighs 30 pounds and has a range of 6 inches. If you can figure out how to weaponize that, you probably deserve to win. Marcus's voice carried a hint of dry humor. Besides, using it properly will mean you can walk. Again, using it as a weapon will just make more of a mess in my tunnel. As Marcus walked away, Zara stared after him in bewilderment. This encounter defied everything she had been taught about humans. Where was the interrogation? The demands for information? The threats and ultimatums? After Marcus disappeared into the darkness, Zara examined the medical supplies he had left. The bone regenerator was indeed calibrated for her species, something that would have required considerable research and preparation. The pain medication was the correct type and dosage for Vorthak biochemistry. Even the antiseptic solution was the proper formulation for her skin type. Despite her suspicions, the pain in her legs was becoming unbearable. Reluctantly, she began treating her injuries, all the while listening for sounds of approaching humans who might be planning to take advantage of her weakened state. They never. Tame got Marcus returned 4 hours later, carrying a tray of food and a container of water. He set them down near the medical supplies and sat against the tunnel wall, far enough away to appear non-threatening. "How are the legs?" he asked quietly. Zara had used the bone regenerator and wrapped her injuries with the provided bandages. The pain had receded to manageable levels, though she would not be running any time soon. "Functional," she replied curtly. Marcus nodded and gestured to the food tray. "Synthesized protein, nutrient paste, and some fruit from the hydroponic gardens. It's not much, but it's what we have. I do not eat human food." "It's not human food. It's food that humans happen to eat. The protein comes from algae farms. The nutrients are standard galactic supplements. And the fruit is native to New Geneva Colony." Marcus picked up a piece of the purple fruit and bit into it. "See? Not poisoned." Despite her protests, Zara's stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. She had not eaten in over 24 hours, and her body needed energy to heal. Marcus stood up again. "I'll leave it here. Eat it or don't, your choice." This pattern continued for 3 days. Marcus would appear twice daily with food and water, check on her recovery without intruding, and leave her alone to heal. He never asked questions about her mission or people. He never tried to convince her that humans were not the monsters she believed them to be. He simply provided what she needed and respected her space. On the 4th day, Zara was able to stand with the help of a makeshift crutch Marcus had brought. Her legs still ached, but the bones had healed enough to support her weight. The tunnel to the surface should be clear now, Marcus informed her during his morning visit. "The repair crews finished stabilizing the passage yesterday." Zara nodded stiffly. "Then I will leave. Probably for the best. Commander Hayes has been asking questions about the energy readings from the collapse. Sooner or later, he's going to want to investigate this section personally." For the first time since their initial encounter, Zara seemed uncertain. "You have not reported my presence to your superiors?" Marcus shook his head. "What would be the point? You're injured, alone, and far from your territory. You're not exactly a military threat in your current condition." "Your commander would disagree." "There is a significant bounty on captured Vorthak scouts." "Probably." Marcus began packing up his toolkit. "But I'm an engineer, not a bounty hunter." As he prepared to leave, Zara spoke again. "Why did you help me?" Marcus paused, considering the question that had clearly been weighing on her mind for days. "A few years ago, I was working on a station that got hit by raiders. Bad ones, the kind that kill for sport." He looked directly at her. "A Vorthak patrol ship responded to our distress call. They didn't have to. We weren't allies." "We weren't?" "Even neutral. But they came anyway, and they drove off the raiders." Zara's golden eyes widened slightly. "That is ... got unusual. The patrol leader told me something before they left. He said that strength without honor is just brutality, and that honor means protecting those who cannot protect themselves, regardless of species." Marcus shouldered his toolkit and headed for the tunnel entrance. "I never forgot that." As his footsteps faded into the distance, Zara stood alone in the damaged tunnel, staring at the food he had brought. For the first time in her adult life, she found herself questioning everything she had been taught about humans. Perhaps, she thought as she carefully made her way toward the surface, not all humans were monsters after all, but she still had a mission to complete, and years of conditioning were not easily overcome. The war between their peoples continued, and she was still a Vorthak warrior. Yet, as she climbed through the darkness toward the surface of Zarian 7, Zara could not shake the memory of a human engineer who had asked for nothing and given everything, simply because it was the right thing to do. Got understanding, and Alliance 6 days had passed since Zara Kethville had escaped from the collapsed mining tunnel. She should have been halfway back to Vorthak space by now, her reconnaissance mission complete. Instead, she found herself perched on a rocky outcropping 3 kilometers from mining station Alpha 7, watching the daily routines of the human settlement. Through her tactical scope, she told herself she was conducting extended surveillance, gathering intelligence on human mining operations and defensive capabilities. But in truth, she was watching one human in particular. Marcus Chen maintained a predictable schedule. Every morning at 06:00 hours, he would emerge from the residential, section and walk to the engineering bay. He would spend his days crawling through maintenance tunnels, repairing equipment, and solving the countless technical problems that plagued the mining operation. In the evenings, he would visit the hydroponic gardens, tending to the plants with the same quiet patience he had shown her. Through her scope, Zara observed details that contradicted everything she had been taught about human nature. Marcus never raised his voice at subordinates, even when they made costly mistakes. He shared his lunch with younger engineers who had forgotten their food. When a piece of critical equipment failed, he worked through the night to repair it, ensuring his colleagues would not face dangerous conditions the next day. Most puzzling of all, she watched him leave small portions of food at various locations around the station's perimeter. At first, she thought it might be some kind of human ritual or superstition. It was only when she saw the small, native creatures that emerged to claim these offerings that she understood. Marcus was feeding the local wildlife, creatures that served no purpose to the mining operation and were generally considered pests by the other humans. On the seventh day, Zara's observations were interrupted by the arrival of 3 unmarked ships approaching the mining station. She immediately recognized their configuration: Corvin raiders, the most ruthless pirates in this sector of space. They flew no flags, followed no codes of honor, and left no survivors. The ships landed in a triangle formation around the station, cutting off all escape routes. Armed figures began pouring out of the vessels, their weapons already charged and ready for slaughter. Zara faced a moment of choice that would define the rest of her life. She could use this opportunity to escape while the humans were distracted by the attack. The raiders would do her work for her, eliminating this mining outpost and everyone. Her mission would be complete, and she would return to Vorthok space with valuable intelligence about human defensive capabilities. Instead, she found herself sliding down the rocky slope toward the station, her combat training taking over as she planned her approach. The first wave of raiders had already breached the main entrance by the time Zara reached the station's perimeter. She could hear weapons fire and human screams echoing from inside the complex. Moving with the fluid grace of a born predator, she slipped through a maintenance hatch that Marcus had shown her during her recovery. The station's corridors were filled with smoke and chaos. Zara's enhanced hearing allowed her to track the movements of both raiders and defenders as she made her way toward the engineering section. She had seen enough of the station's layout during her confinement to navigate the passages even in the dark. She found Marcus in the main engineering bay, working frantically at a control console while laser bolts flew over his head. 3 other engineers crouched behind overturned tables, returning fire with maintenance tools that had been hastily converted into weapons. "The power core," Marcus shouted to his colleagues. "If they breach the containment chamber, the explosion will take out half the station." One of the raiders, a massive Coven with cybernetic arms, had positioned himself near the entrance too. The power core chamber, his heavy assault rifle, swept the room in controlled bursts, keeping the humans pinned down while his companions worked to override the security locks. Zara did not hesitate. She dropped through a ceiling vent directly. Behind the Coven raider, all 4 of her arms moving in perfect coordination. Her claws found the gaps in his armor, and he collapsed without ever knowing what had killed him. The other raiders in the room spun to face this new threat, but Zara was already in motion. Her injured legs protested the violent movement, but adrenaline and combat conditioning overrode the pain. She moved like liquid shadow, using the room's machinery as cover while her claws and speed dismantled the raider squad. When the last raider fell, the engineering bay was silent except for the hum of machinery and the labored breathing of the humans. Marcus rose slowly from behind his console, staring at Zara in shock. "You came back," he said quietly. "The power core," Zara replied, ignoring his surprise. "How many more raiders are in the station?" Marcus blinked, refocusing on the immediate crisis. "Sensors show at least 30 more, spread throughout the facility. They're trying to reach the administrative center where Commander Hayes is coordinating the defense." Zara moved to the fallen Corvin leader and stripped him of weapons and equipment. What is the most direct route? Through Section B, but that's where most of the raiders are concentrated. It would be suicide. For a human, perhaps. Zara's golden eyes gleamed with predatory anticipation. I am Vorthok. We are bred for war. What followed was a masterclass in coordinated warfare. Marcus used his intimate knowledge of the station's systems to guide Zara through maintenance passages and service tunnels, allowing her to emerge behind enemy positions. His engineering expertise created diversions and obstacles that channeled the raiders into kill zones where Zara's superior combat skills could be fully utilized. They moved through the station like a perfectly synchronized team. Marcus would disable lights or redirect atmospheric systems to create confusion, while Zara used the darkness and chaos to eliminate threats with ruthless efficiency. When they encountered groups too large for direct assault, Marcus would jury-rig explosive devices from mining equipment while Zara provided covering fire with captured raider weapons. The tide of battle turned when they reached the administrative center. Commander Hayes and his remaining security team were trapped in the command center, surrounded by raiders who were preparing to breach the reinforced doors with heavy explosives. Marcus activated the station's emergency protocols, flooding the corridors with fire suppression foam that blinded the attackers and made their footing treacherous. Zara struck like a force of nature, her forearms wielding multiple weapons as she carved through the raider formation. The final confrontation took place in the station's main hangar, where the surviving raiders had fallen back to their ships. Their leader, a scarred Corvin captain with a reputation for never leaving witnesses, had taken 3 human engineers as hostages. One step closer, and I execute them all. The captain snarled, pressing his weapon against the head of the nearest hostage. Zara and Marcus had positioned themselves at opposite ends of the hangar. They could not communicate verbally without alerting the raiders, but they had fought side by side long enough to understand each other's methods. Marcus began a slow, theatrical approach, drawing the raiders' attention while pretending to negotiate. His movements were deliberately obvious, designed to make the enemy focus on the perceived threat he represented. While all eyes were on the approaching human, Zara scaled the hangar's support structure with silent grace. She positioned herself directly above the hostage situation, calculating angles and timing with the precision of a trained killer. When Marcus gave the signal, a subtle gesture that looked like nervous fidgeting to the raiders, Zara dropped from the ceiling like a falling star. Her claws found their targets with surgical precision, eliminating the hostiles while leaving the hostages unharmed. The surviving raiders, demoralized and leaderless, surrendered without further resistance. In the aftermath of the battle, as medical teams treated the wounded and security forces secured the prisoners, Zara found herself alone with Marcus in the damaged engineering bay where their partnership had begun. "Why?" Marcus asked, echoing the question she had posed to him days earlier. Zara was quiet for a long moment, studying her hands. They were stained with the blood of enemies, but for the first time in her life, she felt no pride in the killing. "I watched you," she said finally. "For days, I watched you work. I watched how you treated your people, how you cared for creatures that served no purpose to your mission. I watched you give freely without expecting anything in return." She looked up at him, her golden eyes reflecting a complexity of emotion that few humans had ever seen in a Vorthok. "My people taught me that humans are driven by greed and cruelty, that you take what you want and destroy what you cannot use. But you that you gave me back my life and asked for nothing. You fed animals that gave you no benefit. You worked through the night to protect colleagues who would never know of your sacrifice." Marcus listened without interruption, recognizing the significance of this moment for both of them. "When I saw those raiders," Zara continued, "I realized that I could not let them destroy something good. I could not let them kill someone who had shown me kindness when they had every reason to show me only hatred." She stood, testing her weight on legs that were finally healing properly. "You asked me once if I was planning to attack you. I told you yes if I could move. I lied. Even then, injured and trapped, I could not bring myself to harm someone who was helping me. Marcus smiled, the expression soft and genuine. So what happens now? The war between our peoples isn't over. No, Zara agreed. It will continue. And good beings on both sides will die for the pride and fear of their leaders. But perhaps there can be small pockets of understanding. Places where individuals choose to see past the hatred and find common ground. She extended one of her 4 hands to him, a gesture of respect and gratitude that transcended species barriers. He showed me that honor exists among humans. That strength can be paired with compassion, and that courage sometimes means choosing kindness over conflict. Marcus clasped her hand, marveling at the trust implicit in the gesture. A Vorthic warrior, bred from birth to despise humanity, was offering him friendship across the divide of war. Will I see you again? He asked. Zara's expression became unreadable, but there was warmth in her golden eyes. Perhaps. The galaxy is vast, but fate has a way of bringing together those who belong in each other's stories. She released his hand and moved toward the hangar where her salvaged scout ship waited. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. Marcus-chan, if more humans were like you, there would be no war between our peoples. If more Vorthic were like you, Marcus replied, the same would be true. As Zara's ship disappeared into the star-filled void, Marcus stood in the hangar doorway, watching until the last trace of her passage faded from the sensors. The station would be rebuilt, the dead would be mourned, and life would continue. But something fundamental had changed. In the depths of a collapsed mining tunnel, 2 enemies had discovered that the greatest human strength was not technology or weapons or tactical brilliance. It was the simple act of sharing food with someone who was hungry, offering help to someone who was hurt, and choosing compassion over fear when faced with the unknown. Across the galaxy, in the council chambers of both species, leaders would continue to speak of war and victory and the necessity of defeating their enemies. But in the quiet moments between battles, some would remember the story of a human engineer and a Vorthic warrior who proved that understanding was possible, even in the darkest of times. The war would continue, but so would hope. And sometimes, hope was the most powerful weapon of all.